Hello, everybody. This is Rick Manning, President of Americans for Limited Government, with the second biggest story of 2022, and it's the elections. And the elections are a big story for a couple of different reasons. Number one, the red wave that didn't happen, even though the Republicans received 3 million more votes for the House of Representatives than the Democrats did, somehow they only managed to get a 5-6 vote majority in the House, taking over the House of Representatives, which is the good news, but losing a seat in the Senate, which is almost impossible for them to have done. But they managed to lose a seat in the Senate, led by the intrepid Mitch McConnell, who was attacking his own Senate candidates throughout the election season and letting everybody know that, he's just fine with being in the minority. So, Mitch, you're in the minority. Congratulations, you got what you wanted. Not good for America, but you got to tell it like it is. And fact is, the amount of undermining, talking about candidate quality and the like, which is just code for my person didn't win the primary. That's what candidate quality means. And since my person didn't win the primary, I don't really care if the Republican wins. And for those of you who think candidate quality matters, I point to you, John Fetterman, and rest my case. Candidate quality doesn't matter. The Democrats had banked votes. The Republicans didn't fight back and didn't run a 1980s campaign as opposed to a 2020 campaign, and didn't learn anything from the 2020 election, because once again, they thought the problem was Donald Trump. But the problem wasn't Donald Trump. The problem is outdated campaigning and an inability to actually mobilize voters and encourage people to register to vote and get out to vote in a meaningful way. A simple point, in places like Herschel Walker loses the runoff, but his turnout from counties that were that voted overwhelmingly for Herschel Walker in the general, the turnout was down. They didn't turn out their votes. The Republicans just didn't turn out their votes. And it's a model. There's a model to do that. And Americans for Limited Government have been very involved in this in the past. And one thing we're going to do is we're going to recommit ourselves to actually making sure elections are done right. And we'll have a conversation about that at a later date. But the elections have long-term consequences. And so let's talk about that. We see Kyrsten Sinema saying she's no longer going to caucus with the Democrats, giving the Democrats a 50 to 49 majority. She's facing hardships in Arizona. Some Democrats are looking to run against her. It's going to be a bloodbath in Arizona, and there's been a lot of talk that Mitch McConnell's been trying to get her to caucus with the Republicans and push out any Republican nominee in favor of Sinema if she'll vote for him for majority leader in 2024, 2025. Those are the things that people talk about in D.C. You have on the House side, you let's just see what happens in terms of who ends up being Speaker. But we look like we've got a kind of a grudge match going on here, and we'll see who ends up being Speaker. But ultimately, the real challenges in this election were in the gubernatorial races, and in some of the state house races. An example in Pennsylvania, the Democrats hold a small edge a 1-vote edge in the House of Representatives in Pennsylvania. There are some that are advantages in trouble because they have 2 members who are moving up to other positions and another member who passed away. And as a result, they actually are in the minority right now with multiple special elections needed in a kind of a surprise attack. The Democrat who never got named the Speaker, never got voted in as Speaker, decided to assume control, surprise, surprise, and set special election dates, without the power to do so. And so this presumed Speaker, the Al Haig of Pennsylvania politics, apparently presumed that she was going to be Speaker, and consequently she decided that she was going to pick special election dates out of a hat. We'll see if the courts allow that to occur, but I don't think it's likely. You don't get to be speaker until you get elected speaker. She doesn't have the votes to be speaker, hence she doesn't get to be speaker. That's pretty basic. Now let's look at a couple of other things. We've got things like, for instance, the governor's race in Pennsylvania, where the Democrat won, the governor's race in Wisconsin, where the Democrat won, the governor's race in Arizona, while disputed, at this point, the Democrat would take office unless the courts intervene. We're looking at a lot of states where the governors will play a tremendous role in what happens in 2024. The Secretary of States will play a tremendous role in what happens in 2024. How do we know this? Because they played a tremendous role in what happened in 2020. So given that power, the maintenance, the inability to knock off the governor of Wisconsin, the governor of Pennsylvania, and the Democrat pick up the governorship of Arizona, assuming it holds, is really has a big impact on the 2024 election, not to mention the future of those states. So lots happened. There's a lot of aspects to this, but most people didn't look at the 2018 election and look at the governor's races. But the governor's races lost by Republicans in 2018, came back to bite them in 2020. And any thinking person who's watched how these elections have been conducted needs to be concerned that the governor's races lost in 2020, 2022 may have the same effect in 2024. But that's why the congressional election this last election has a lasting impact. It's not just what happens in Congress, it's what happens in the states. And we're going to have to see what the outcome is long term.